Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Knock. Cedric Spencer had learned to trust his instincts during 15 years as an investigative journalist. Right now, those instincts were screaming at him through his laptop screen. The doorbell camera alert had pinged at 11:47 p.m., late enough to be suspicious, early enough that neighbors might still be awake. The woman on his porch looked mid-30s, her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her blonde hair disheveled. She kept glancing over her shoulder at the street, where fog had rolled in thick from the bay. Cedric lived in a quiet neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, specifically because nothing ever happened here. After the Meridian Pharma expose 5 years ago, the investigation that had ended his journalism career but bankrupted a corrupt pharmaceutical empire, he'd wanted peace. His freelance writing paid enough for this modest 2-story house, and his neighbors were retired couples who waved from their gardens. This woman didn't belong, but when she looked directly at the camera, her expression of raw terror made the decision for him. Cedric pushed back from his desk, leaving his half-finished article about urban farming, and headed downstairs. "Please." Her voice came muffled through the door. "Please, they're right behind me. They're going to kill me." Cedric checked the camera feed on his phone. The street appeared empty, but something felt choreographed about her panic. Still, he'd covered human trafficking rings before. He'd seen that look of genuine fear. He opened the door. The woman stumbled inside, gripping his arm. "Thank you, oh God, thank you." Then her expression changed. The fear evaporated, replaced by something harder. She reached past him and locked the deadbolt, sliding the chain into place. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and Cedric heard the genuine regret in her voice. But they needed someone at this address. Before he could respond, he heard it, footsteps upstairs. In his office, where he'd been sitting 30 seconds ago. Cedric's military training from 2 decades prior kicked in instantly. He grabbed the woman's wrist, his voice low and controlled. "Who's up there?" "People who want to ruin your life." She wouldn't meet his eyes. "My name is Madge Kane. They have my daughter." The footsteps overhead became multiple, at least 3 people moving through his house. Cedric heard drawers opening, furniture being moved. A professional search. "Why me?" Cedric pulled Madge toward the kitchen, away from the staircase. "Why this address?" "Because 5 years ago, you destroyed the wrong man's father." The pieces clicked together in Cedric's mind with sickening clarity. Meridian Pharmaceuticals. His expose had revealed they were manufacturing contaminated medications, falsifying trial data, and bribing FDA officials. The company had collapsed within 6 months. The CEO, Richard Faulkner, had died of a heart attack before trial. But Faulkner had a son. "Floyd Faulkner," Cedric said. Madge nodded, tears now streaming down her face, real ones this time. "He's been planning this for 3 years. This house, the previous owner was connected to bad people. Floyd bought it through shell companies, then sold it to you 6 months ago. He's been waiting for the right moment." The footsteps stopped. A voice called down from upstairs. "Clear. We've got it all." Seconds later, 3 men descended the staircase. 2 wore police uniforms. The third, in plain clothes, carried a duffel bag and wore latex gloves. He smiled at Cedric, cold and triumphant. "Cedric Spencer?" The man pulled out a badge. "Detective Wally Rogers, Portland PD. We've received a tip about illegal materials at this residence. We have a warrant." "Show me the warrant." Cedric's voice stayed calm, but his mind raced through options. This was a frame job, professionally executed. Rogers handed over a document that looked legitimate. "We've recovered quite a bit of evidence from your home office, Mr. Spencer. Files, photographs, encrypted hard drives, all related to a trafficking operation." "That's impossible. I've never." "Save it for your lawyer." Rogers nodded to the uniformed officers. "Cedric Spencer, you're under arrest for possession of child exploitation materials and conspiracy to commit human trafficking." As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Cedric watched Madge Kane. She stood against the wall, crying silently, her role in the theater complete. But she'd given him information, names, motives, the truth about his house. She'd given him what he needed to fight back. Chapter 2. The Evidence. The interrogation room at Portland's Central Precinct smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Cedric had been here before, on the other side of the table, interviewing dirty cops for his articles. The irony wasn't lost on him. Detective Wally Rogers sat across from him, a manila folder thick with printed pages between them. Beside Rogers sat a woman Cedric didn't recognize. Late 40s, expensive suit, the kind of polished appearance that screamed corporate lawyer. "Mr. Spencer," the woman began, "I'm Gilda Conley, Assistant District Attorney. The evidence against you is substantial. If you cooperate now, we might be able to arrange a more favorable plea deal." Cedric studied her carefully. Gilda Conley. The name triggered a memory. She'd been the chief legal counsel for Meridian Pharmaceuticals. He'd interviewed her during his investigation, watched her dodge questions with practiced ease. 6 months after the company collapsed, she disappeared from public record. Now she was assistant DA? Impossible. This was theater. "I want to see my lawyer," Cedric said calmly. "And I want to know what evidence you supposedly found in my house." Rogers smirked and opened the folder. He slid several photographs across the table. Images of files on a computer screen, lists of names and addresses, encrypted folders with disturbing titles. These were found on a hard drive hidden in your office closet. The forensics team also recovered physical files documenting a trafficking network operating in the Pacific Northwest. "I've never seen any of this." Cedric kept his voice level. "And any competent forensics team will prove those files were planted within the last 24 hours. Digital footprints don't lie." Gilda's smile tightened. "Technology can be explained away. Witnesses are harder to dismiss. We have testimony from your neighbor, Douglas Bright, who's noticed suspicious visitors to your house at odd hours. We have financial records showing unusual cash deposits to your account, which you fabricated." Cedric leaned forward. "Let's stop pretending this is legitimate. You're not really with the DA's office, are you, Ms. Conley? You're still working for what's left of Meridian, or more specifically, for Floyd Faulkner." The temperature in the room dropped. Rogers' hand moved toward his service weapon, a tell that confirmed Cedric's suspicions. These weren't real cops following procedure. This was a private revenge operation masquerading as law enforcement. Gilda recovered her composure first. "You're paranoid, Mr. Spencer. Understandable, given the serious charges you're facing." "Then let me make a phone call," Cedric said, "to the real Portland PD. Let's see if they have any record of this arrest, this warrant, or you." For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Gilda's face. Rogers stood abruptly. "Interview's over. We'll let you think about your situation overnight." They left Cedric alone in the interrogation room. He immediately tested the door, locked from the outside. The two-way mirror offered no escape. He was trapped in a facility that might not even be the real police station. But Cedric Spencer hadn't survived 15 years of investigative journalism by being unprepared. Before opening his door to Madge Kane, he'd triggered a backup protocol, a cloud upload system that captured his door camera footage and sent copies to 3 trusted contacts. One was his former editor at the Washington Post. Another was his lawyer. The third was an FBI contact from his trafficking investigations. If he wasn't released by morning, those contacts would receive his emergency message along with footage of everything that had happened at his house. The question was whether Floyd Faulkner knew about his backup systems and whether this elaborate trap had accounted for them. Hours passed. Cedric used the time to mentally catalog everything he knew about Floyd Faulkner. The son had been in his early 20s when Meridian collapsed, old enough to have worked for the company, young enough to be overlooked in Cedric's investigation. Smart, according to records. MBA from Stanford. Before his father's death, Floyd had been positioned to take over the pharmaceutical empire. Then Cedric's expose had burned it all down. 5 years of planning this revenge suggested serious resources and connections. The fake police setup, the house purchase, the planted evidence. This was a long game played by someone patient and methodical. Around 3 a.m., the door opened. But instead of Rogers or Gilda, Madge Kane stepped inside. She carried a paper bag from a local diner and a bottle of water. "They're letting me bring you food," she said quietly. "Part of the performance." The sympathetic witness who feels bad for you. Cedric accepted the bag, but didn't eat. Why are you really here? Madge sat down across from him, her earlier composure completely gone. She looked exhausted, haunted, because you need to understand how trapped you are, and because maybe you can find a way out that saves both of us. Tell me about your daughter. Susanna. She's 19, studying marine biology at Oregon State. Madge's voice cracked. 3 months ago, Floyd's people grabbed her from campus. They've been holding her somewhere, sending me proof-of-life videos. They said if I help with this one thing, getting you to open your door, they'd let her go. You know they're lying, Cedric said gently. I know. Madge wiped her eyes. But what choice did I have? You don't have children, Mr. Spencer. You can't understand. Understand leverage. And I understand that Floyd Faulkner doesn't leave loose ends. Cedric leaned forward. But I also understand revenge. If you help me, I can help you get Susanna back. And we can make Floyd and everyone working for him pay for what they've done. Madge stared at him for a long moment. They said you were dangerous, that you destroyed lives with your articles, that you didn't care who got hurt as long as you got your story. Floyd's father was killing people with contaminated medications. I cared about those victims. Cedric's voice hardened. But you're right that I'm dangerous, especially to people who make the mistake of underestimating me. Chapter 3. The Release. Morning came with unexpected news. Cedric was released on bail, $500,000 posted by an anonymous benefactor. As he collected his belongings at the front desk, he realized the police station was legitimate. Floyd had enough connections to orchestrate a real arrest with real charges, which meant the threat was even more serious than he'd anticipated. Outside, a familiar car waited at the curb. Stanford Stanton, Cedric's lawyer for the past decade, leaned against a black Mercedes with his arms crossed. You look terrible, Stanford said by way of greeting. He was a thin, intense man in his 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Your emergency protocol worked. I got the door camera footage and immediately knew something was wrong. The arrest record shows a warrant based on an anonymous tip, but the timeline doesn't match the footage. It's a setup, Cedric confirmed. Floyd Faulkner, son of Richard Faulkner from Meridian Pharma. He's been planning this for years. Stanford's expression darkened. The pharmaceutical company from your expose? That's elaborate revenge. It gets worse. As they drove away from the station, Cedric explained everything. The house purchase, Madge Kane's forced cooperation, the planted evidence, Gilda Conley's involvement. Stanford listened without interrupting, a habit from years of complex cases. We need to prove the evidence was planted, Stanford finally said. And we need to find out who really owns that house you bought. If we can trace it back to Faulkner, we can demonstrate a conspiracy to frame you. The evidence is a distraction, Cedric said. Floyd doesn't actually want me in prison. He wants me destroyed, reputation, credibility, everything I built as a journalist. Even if we prove the charges are fake, the accusation alone does permanent damage. People remember the accusation, not the exoneration. So what do you want to do? Cedric smiled grimly. I want to investigate Floyd Faulkner the same way I investigated his father. Find out what he's been doing for the past 5 years. An operation this sophisticated requires money and infrastructure. He's not just some angry kid, he's built something. Stanford pulled up to a hotel in downtown Portland. Cedric's house was still a crime scene, cordoned off while forensics continued their work. I'll start pulling records on the house purchase and Faulkner's financial activities. You should lay low. No. Cedric opened the car door. I've spent 5 years laying low. It's time to remember why Floyd's father feared me in the first place. That afternoon, Cedric met Madge Kane at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. She'd reached out through a burner number he'd slipped to her during their interrogation room conversation. She looked even worse than the night before, sleep-deprived and terrified. They know I talked to you, she said immediately. Floyd called this morning. He said if I make contact again, Susanna dies. But you came anyway. Cedric ordered them both coffee, which means you're ready to fight back. Madge pulled out her phone and showed him a video. In it, a young woman sat in what looked like a basement, reading that day's newspaper to prove the date. Susanna Sharp had her mother's blonde hair and the same frightened eyes Madge had shown at Cedric's door. "This came an hour ago," Madge whispered. Floyd's message was clear. "Your part is done. So is she." Cedric's jaw tightened. "Where's Floyd operating from?" "I don't know. All my contact has been through Wally Rogers and Gilda Conley. They set up the whole thing. But I know Floyd has legitimate businesses now. A pharmaceutical distribution company called Apex Medical Solutions. It's completely legal, at least on paper. Distribution. Cedric's investigative instincts activated. What kind of medications? I don't know the details. But Gilda mentioned something once about continuing the family business the right way. She was drunk at a planning meeting. I overheard through a door. Cedric pulled out his laptop and started searching. Apex Medical Solutions had a professional website, office locations in 3 states, and glowing reviews. Floyd Faulkner was listed as CEO. The company distributed generic medications to hospitals and clinics, filling the gap left when major pharmaceutical companies abandoned less profitable drugs. On the surface, it looked completely legitimate. But Cedric had learned to look beneath surfaces. "I need access to Floyd's operation," Cedric said. "Someone on the inside who can tell me what Apex really does." Madge hesitated, then said, "There's someone. Nelson Gonzalez. He's one of Floyd's drivers, delivers medications to clinics. He's not like the others. I've seen him look uncomfortable during planning meetings. Maybe he can be turned. Set up a meeting. Tell him you need help finding your daughter, that Floyd's going to kill her." Cedric finished his coffee. "And Madge, whatever happens next, you need to be ready. When I take down Floyd Faulkner, it's going to get ugly before it gets better." Madge met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw steel beneath her fear. "Good. I want ugly. I want him to suffer for what he's done to my daughter." That evening, Cedric's phone rang. The caller ID showed a block number. "Mr. Spencer." Floyd Faulkner's voice was smooth, educated, with an undercurrent of cold satisfaction. "I wanted to call personally and explain how this is going to work. Over the next few weeks, more evidence will surface. Witnesses will come forward. Your reputation will die slowly, publicly, painfully. Just like your father's company," Cedric replied calmly. A pause. "Exactly. You taught me that the truth doesn't matter, only the narrative. I'm simply applying your lessons. Your father was guilty. I proved it, and you'll be guilty too in the court of public opinion. That's all that matters." Floyd's voice turned colder. "Don't try to fight this, Mr. Spencer. I've spent 5 years preparing. You can't win." "We'll see," Cedric said, and hung up. He stared at his laptop screen, at Floyd Faulkner's corporate profile picture. Late 20s, handsome in an artificial way, with his father's same calculating eyes. This wasn't just revenge. Floyd was trying to prove himself smarter, more ruthless, more successful than his father ever was. Which meant Floyd was going to make mistakes. Pride always created vulnerabilities. Cedric opened a new document and began typing. He was an investigative journalist, and it was time to investigate. Chapter 4. The Trail. Nelson Gonzalez met them at a warehouse district near the Columbia River, where shipping containers rusted in rows and security was minimal. The young man, early 20s, nervous energy, looked like he regretted agreeing to this meeting the moment he saw Cedric. "Madge said you could help," Nelson said, glancing around. "But you're the guy Floyd's trying to destroy. How can you help anyone?" "Because I know how to find the truth," Cedric replied. "And right now, the truth is that Floyd Faulkner is running something illegal through Apex Medical Solutions. I need you to tell me what you've seen." Nelson shifted uncomfortably. "I just drive medications to clinics. That's it." But he hesitated. "Some of the deliveries don't make sense. Wrong quantities, weird schedules, drops at places that aren't medical facilities." "What kind of places?" "Private homes, warehouses, once a yacht at the marina." Nelson pulled out his phone and showed delivery logs. "I keep records because the manifests never match what I'm actually carrying. Floyd's cousin, Jewel Morris, handles the paperwork. He falsifies everything." Cedric photographed the logs. This was the opening he needed. "Are you willing to testify?" "If you can protect me." Nelson's voice dropped. "Floyd's people are dangerous. Wally Rogers, that fake cop, he killed someone last year. I saw the body being loaded into a truck behind the warehouse. They thought I was on a delivery. Madge gasped. Nelson, why didn't you go to the police? Because Wally Rogers IS police. Real badge, real authority. Half the Portland PD is on Floyd's payroll. Nelson looked at Cedric. That's why he got arrested so easily. Floyd owns enough cops to make it legitimate. This was worse than Cedric had imagined. Floyd hadn't just planned an elaborate frame job. He'd built an entire corrupt infrastructure. Taking him down would require more than just evidence. It would require dismantling a network. I need to see one of these irregular deliveries, Cedric said. When's your next? Tomorrow night. Drop at a house in Lake Oswego, expensive neighborhood. Manifest says it's insulin, but the quantity is enough to stock a small hospital. Nelson met Cedric's eyes. If I let you follow me, Floyd can't know. He's paranoid, has people watching everything. He should be paranoid, Cedric said, because I'm coming for him. The next evening, Cedric and Stanford followed Nelson's delivery van at a careful distance. Lake Oswego's mansions gleamed in the twilight, each property worth millions. Nelson turned into a long driveway leading to a modern house overlooking the lake. That's Floyd's primary residence, Stanford said, checking property records on his tablet. Purchased 2 years ago through another shell company. He's been building his empire right under everyone's noses. They watched as Nelson delivered several large boxes. But instead of leaving, he was led inside by Jewel Morris, a heavy-set man in his 30s with the calculating eyes of middle management. Through their long-lens camera, they saw Nelson and Jewel having an animated conversation. Something's wrong, Cedric muttered. Nelson's been inside too long. 15 minutes later, Nelson emerged, but 2 of Floyd's security team followed him to his van. Cedric's stomach dropped as he realized what had happened. Nelson had been compromised. We need to leave, Stanford said urgently. If they made Nelson. Gunshots shattered the quiet evening. Nelson's van swerved, tires blown out by precise shooting. 3 black SUVs emerged from side streets, boxing them in. Cedric saw Wally Rogers exit one vehicle, gun drawn. Go! Cedric shouted. Stanford floored the Mercedes, taking a side street at dangerous speed. Behind them, the SUVs gave chase. Rogers fired twice. Bullets starred the rear windshield, but didn't penetrate. Stanford took another turn, then another, navigating the residential maze while Cedric called 911. This is Cedric Spencer. Shots fired in Lake Oswego. He gave the address, hoping the real police would respond faster than Floyd's corrupted officers. Stanford took a hard right into a shopping center, killed the lights, and tucked the Mercedes between 2 delivery trucks. They waited, hearts pounding, as the SUVs roared past on the main road. Nelson, Madge whispered from the back seat, her face pale. They killed him. Floyd knew he was helping us. We don't know that yet, Cedric said, though his gut told him otherwise. Floyd had just escalated from framing to murder, which meant they were running out of time. When they finally returned to Stanford's office downtown, Cedric spent hours reviewing everything they gathered. Nelson's delivery logs, photographs of Floyd's house, financial records Stanford had pulled on Apex Medical Solutions. The pattern emerged slowly. Apex distributed legitimate medications, but embedded in those shipments were prescription opioids and controlled substances, the same kind of drugs that had triggered the opioid crisis years earlier. Floyd wasn't just continuing his father's pharmaceutical business. He was running a sophisticated drug distribution operation under the cover of legal medical supplies. He's supplying the entire Pacific Northwest black market, Cedric said, laying out the evidence. Hospitals order insulin. They get insulin plus fentanyl. Clinics order antibiotics. They get antibiotics plus hydrocodone. Floyd's drivers like Nelson deliver everything mixed together, and someone at each location separates the legal from illegal supplies. Stanford stared at the evidence wall Cedric had created. This is bigger than revenge against you. Floyd's built a criminal empire, and he's terrified I'll expose it the same way I exposed his father. Cedric smiled grimly, which is exactly what I'm going to do. But this time, I won't just write an article. I'm going to destroy everything he's built. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You took something from my father. Now I'll take everything from you, starting with Madge Kane's daughter. Check your email. Cedric's blood ran cold. The attached video showed Susanna Sharp, bound to a chair in what looked like a basement. Behind her stood Gilda Conley, holding a gun. You have 48 hours to turn yourself into the police and confess to the trafficking charges. Gilda's voice came through the video. Public confession, full admission of guilt, or Susanna dies, and we'll make it look like you did it. Madge let out a choked sob. We have to save her. Cedric, please. We will. Cedric's mind raced. Floyd had just made his first real mistake, showing where Susanna was being held. The video included enough background details for someone with investigative experience to narrow down the location. And Cedric Spencer had 15 years of investigative experience. Chapter 5, The Basement. The video analysis took 6 hours. Cedric used every technique he'd learned. Sound analysis to identify ambient noise, visual examination of the basement's construction, even the angle of shadows to determine geographic position. Stanford helped, pulling up building permits and property records. By dawn, they narrowed it to 3 possible locations in Portland's industrial district. All were properties connected to shell companies in Floyd's network. We can't go to the police, Madge said, exhausted from a sleepless night. Wally Rogers will warn Floyd immediately. We're not going to the police. Cedric loaded fresh batteries into his camera equipment. We're going to get Susanna ourselves. Then we're going to use Floyd's own leverage against him. The first location was an old textile factory, abandoned for a decade. Cedric and Stanford scouted it carefully. No signs of recent activity, no vehicles, no security. They marked it off the list. The second was a warehouse near the port. More promising, fresh tire tracks, new locks on old doors, and a white van parked behind the building. Through binoculars, Cedric spotted a guard smoking near a side entrance. This is it, he said quietly. They waited until midnight, watching the guard patterns. 2 men rotated shifts every 4 hours. The warehouse had cameras, but they were focused on the front entrance and loading dock. A side door near the dumpsters had no coverage. This is insane, Stanford whispered as they approached the building. We should call federal authorities, FBI, anyone. And by the time they get a warrant and raid the place, Susanna's dead and Floyd's cleaned up the evidence. Cedric picked the lock on the side door, a skill learned while investigating organized crime. We have one shot at this. Inside, the warehouse was divided into sections. Old machinery rusted in corners. But toward the back, Cedric heard voices, muffled conversation, then laughter. He motioned Stanford to stay hidden while he crept closer. Through a grimy window, he saw them. Gilda Conley sat at a folding table with Jewel Morris playing cards. Beyond them, a door with a heavy padlock likely led to the basement where Susanna was held. 2 more guards stood nearby, both armed. For opponents, 2 with guns. The odds were terrible. Cedric pulled out his phone and composed a text to his FBI contact, Special Agent Hunter McCarty, who'd worked with him on trafficking investigations years ago. He'd been avoiding federal involvement because he wanted to handle Floyd personally. But Susanna's life mattered more than revenge. The text included their location, photographs of the guards, and a summary of Floyd's operation. He hit send, then set the phone to silent. What are you doing? Stanford whispered urgently. Buying time. Cedric checked his watch. FBI response time in Portland is 23 minutes if they're already mobilized. We need to keep them from moving Susanna until then. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and hurled it across the warehouse. It crashed against old machinery with explosive noise. The guards immediately went on alert, weapons drawn. Check it out, Gilda ordered. 2 guards moved toward the noise. Cedric and Stanford pressed themselves into shadows as the guards passed. Once they were clear, Cedric moved toward the basement door. Hey, Jewel Morris had spotted him. We've got an intruder. Everything happened fast. Cedric rushed the remaining guard, using momentum and surprise to tackle him before he could fire. They crashed into the card table. Gilda lunged for her gun, but Stanford, in a moment of unexpected courage, grabbed a metal chair and swung it hard into her shoulder. The gun skittered across the floor. Cedric kneed his opponent in the ribs and grabbed the weapon, rising to aim at Gilda and Jewel. "Don't move," he said calmly, though his heart hammered. Behind them, the two guards who'd investigated the noise came running back. Cedric fired once into the air, a warning shot that echoed through the warehouse. Everyone froze. "I've already called the FBI," Cedric said. "They're on their way. You have two choices: run now and maybe get away, or stay and definitely go to prison." For a moment, the guards looked uncertain. Then they heard it, sirens approaching fast. Jewel Morris bolted for the front entrance. The two guards followed, abandoning their posts. Gilda stayed frozen, calculating odds. "Give me the key to that basement door," Cedric demanded. "Floyd will kill me if I..." "Floyd's going to prison." Cedric kept the gun steady. "You're going to prison. The only question is whether you add murder to your charges when Susanna dies down there." "Key. Now." Gilda slowly pulled a keyring from her pocket and tossed it to Stanford. "You have no idea what you've started," she said. "Floyd has contingencies. Evidence against you that will surface even if he's arrested. Your life is over, Spencer." "We'll see about that," Cedric replied as armed FBI agents crashed through the doors. The next 2 hours were chaos. Special Agent McCarty took command, securing the scene and sending medics into the basement. Susanna Sharp emerged dehydrated and traumatized but alive. Madge collapsed in tears, holding her daughter while paramedics checked her vital signs. Gilda Conley was arrested without resistance. The two guards who fled were caught 3 blocks away. Jewel Morris made it further, but the FBI had his description and vehicle information. "You're a goddamn idiot," McCarty told Cedric, though there was respect in his voice. "Doing vigilante raids instead of calling us immediately." "I called you eventually," Cedric said, "and we save a life." "Yeah, well, now you've tipped off Floyd Faulkner that we're onto him." McCarty checked his tablet. "I pulled the files you sent me about Apex Medical Solutions. If even half of this is accurate, we're looking at a massive federal case. But Faulkner will lawyer up and start destroying evidence." "Let him try," Cedric said. "I know things about his operation that his own people don't, and I'm going to make sure every detail goes public." McCarty studied him carefully. "This is personal for you. The frame job with the trafficking charges, we can clear that up now that we have Gilda Conley in custody. But you want more than exoneration, don't you?" "I want justice," Cedric said. "The same kind I got for your trafficking victims years ago. Floyd Faulkner has built an empire on poison and corruption. I'm going to burn it all down." Chapter 6. The Counterattack. Floyd Faulkner's arrest warrant was issued 36 hours after the warehouse raid. But when FBI agents arrived at his Lake Oswego mansion, they found it empty. Floyd had disappeared, taking Wally Rogers and several key members of his organization with him. "He knew we were coming," McCarty said grimly at the FBI field office. "Someone tipped him off? Or he had a surveillance system watching for any activity at the warehouse," Cedric suggested. "Floyd's paranoid and thorough. He planned for this contingency." But Floyd's disappearance didn't stop Cedric's investigation. With Gilda Conley in federal custody and cooperative, after her lawyer explained the mountain of evidence against her, Cedric finally got the full picture of Floyd's operation. Apex Medical Solutions was the center of a multi-state drug distribution network. Floyd had contracts with legitimate pharmaceutical manufacturers, wholesalers, and medical facilities. But embedded in those legal operations were carefully hidden illegal transactions. Opioids, stimulants, and other controlled substances were purchased through legitimate channels, then diverted to black market dealers. He learned from his father's mistakes, Cedric explained to Stanford and Madge at his hotel suite, where they'd gathered to review evidence. Richard Faulkner got caught because he manufactured fake medications, physical evidence that could be tested and proven fraudulent. Floyd only distributes real medications, just to the wrong people. Much harder to prove. Except we have Nelson's delivery logs, Stanford pointed out, and now Gilda's testimony, which Floyd will claim are fabrications. Gilda's a disgraced corporate lawyer facing serious charges. Any defense attorney will shred her credibility. Cedric studied the evidence boards he'd created. "We need something irrefutable. Physical proof of the illegal distributions," financial records showing the money flow, or his phone rang. Unknown number, but he answered it anyway. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Floyd Faulkner's voice came through, angry now instead of coldly amused. Gilda was supposed to be loyal. You turn my own people against me. I'm an investigative journalist, Cedric replied calmly. It's what I do. And just like with your father, I'm going to expose everything. My father was a visionary who tried to make affordable medications. Floyd's voice rose. You destroyed him over paperwork violations and technicalities. You couldn't see the bigger picture. Your father killed 17 people with contaminated medications, Cedric said flatly. I documented every death, every family destroyed. There was no bigger picture that justified those deaths. Silence on the line. Then Floyd said, You're right. My father was guilty, but I'm not. Apex Medical Solutions is legitimate. Any illegal activity was done by rogue employees without my knowledge. Gilda, Jewel, Wally, they were all operating behind my back. That won't work. You have nothing that definitively ties me to illegal activity, Floyd interrupted. I've been very careful, Mr. Spencer. Everything in my name is legal. The drug distribution was handled through separate entities with plausible deniability. Even if you prove Apex was used for illegal purposes, you can't prove I knew about it. Cedric's jaw tightened because Floyd was right. The evidence was substantial but indirect. A good defense attorney could create reasonable doubt. However, Floyd continued, I'm willing to offer you a deal. Drop your investigation, stop cooperating with the FBI, and I'll make sure the remaining evidence against you disappears. The trafficking charges, the planted evidence, all of it. You could go back to your quiet life as a freelance writer. And you keep running your drug operation. I keep running my legitimate pharmaceutical distribution company, Floyd corrected. What my employees did without my knowledge is their problem, not mine. No deal, Cedric said. Then I'll destroy you, Floyd replied coldly. I have backups to my backups, Spencer. Evidence planted in multiple locations. Testimonies from people you've never heard of. Digital trails that'll make you look guilty of everything from trafficking to murder. You'll spend the rest of your life fighting charges, even if you win some of them. Your reputation, your credibility, your entire existence will be consumed by legal battles. You forgot something, Cedric said. I don't care about my reputation. I care about the truth. And the truth is that you're a criminal who inherited your father's worst qualities. I'm going to prove it, and I'm going to make sure you end up in prison. Floyd laughed, bitter and angry. Then let's see who destroys whom first. The call ended. Cedric set down his phone and looked at Stanford and Madge, who'd heard everything on speaker. He's going to escalate, Stanford said. More planted evidence, false witnesses, maybe even violence. Good, Cedric replied. Because the more Floyd acts, the more mistakes he'll make. Right now, we have circumstantial evidence. But if he comes after me directly, he'll create the concrete proof we need. You're using yourself as bait, Madge realized. I'm using myself as a journalist, Cedric corrected. Floyd thinks he's hunting me, but I'm hunting him, and I've been doing this a lot longer. Over the next week, Cedric worked with FBI agents to build the case against Floyd's organization. Gilda calmly provided detailed testimony about the operational structure, financial arrangements, and key players. Jewel Morris was arrested trying to cross into Canada and immediately cooperated in exchange for a reduced sentence. But Floyd himself remained hidden, communicating through encrypted channels and burner phones. Wally Rogers had also vanished, likely serving as Floyd's primary enforcer in security. Then the counterattack came. A news story broke on local Portland media. Disgraced journalist arrested again. New evidence surfaces in trafficking case. The article detailed supposed new evidence found at a second property. More files, more photographs, testimony from alleged victims who claimed Cedric had been running the trafficking operation for years. Stanford immediately filed motions to have the evidence examined, but the damage was done. Cedric's name was trending on social media. Journalists from his former publications called for comment, and public opinion turned sharply against him. This is what Floyd wanted all along, Cedric said, watching the news coverage. Not just to frame me, but to completely discredit me. so that anything I reveal about him looks like desperate lies from a guilty man trying to deflect. It's working, Madge said quietly. People believe it. The comments online are, they're horrible. But Cedric was already moving to the next step of his plan. Floyd's had to come out of hiding to plant this evidence and coordinate the media coverage, which means he's in Portland somewhere, working through intermediaries but close enough to manage the operation. He pulled out the detailed maps and financial records they compiled. Apex Medical Solutions has 12 distribution facilities in the Portland metro area. Floyd will be at one of them, coordinating everything. I just need to figure out which one. Ow, Stanford asked. Cedric smiled. By giving Floyd what he wants. He's trying to draw me out, make me look desperate and guilty. So I'll play into that. I'll make him think I'm about to do something drastic, and he'll have to respond personally. When he does, we'll have him. This is incredibly dangerous, Stanford warned. Probably, Cedric agreed. But I didn't spend 15 years taking down criminals to let one destroy me now. Floyd Faulkner wants a war? He's got one. Chapter 7, The Setup. Cedric Spencer's plan relied on one crucial insight. Floyd Faulkner's need to witness his revenge personally. The elaborate frame job, the public humiliation, the systematic destruction of Cedric's reputation. All of it pointed to someone who wanted to see his enemy suffer. Floyd will come if he thinks I'm breaking, Cedric explained to Agent McCarty and Stanford in a secure FBI conference room. He'll want to see it happen. So, you're proposing we fake your breakdown? McCarty looked skeptical. Make him think you're about to do something desperate. Exactly. I'll leak information through channels Floyd is monitoring. Hint that I've hidden evidence in a storage facility. Suggest I'm planning to run. Make it look like I'm unraveling. Cedric pulled up a map. We set the trap at the old Riverside storage facility in industrial northwest Portland. It's isolated, lots of containers and hiding spots, easy to surveil. And you think Floyd will come personally? He won't be able to resist. 5 years of planning, and he gets to watch his enemy collapse. Cedric's expression hardened. But what he'll actually be walking into is a documented sting operation. We'll have cameras, agents in position, and irrefutable proof of Floyd's involvement in the frame job. Stanford interjected. What about Wally Rogers? He's Floyd's enforcer, probably armed and dangerous. That's the risk, Cedric admitted. But the FBI will have tactical teams in position. And I'll be wearing a wire, recording everything Floyd says. McCarty considered it. This violates about a dozen protocols. If anything goes wrong, then I'm the only one at risk, Cedric said. And I'm volunteering. Over the next 3 days, Cedric carefully laid his breadcrumb trail. He called his former editor at the Washington Post, knowing Floyd had people monitoring his contacts, and spoke in vague, panicked terms about evidence and needing to disappear. He visited the storage facility multiple times, making sure to be captured on traffic cameras. He even posted a cryptic message on social media. The truth is buried, but I know where. Floyd's response came on the 4th day. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning, Spencer. It won't work. Perfect. He'd taken the bait. The night of the operation, Cedric arrived at Riverside Storage at 11 p.m. The facility was a maze of shipping containers and storage units surrounded by a chain-link fence. Agent McCarty had positioned tactical teams in 3 adjacent buildings with sight lines on the central area. Cedric wore a wire under his jacket and carried a duffel bag filled with fake documents, props to sell the performance. He went to storage unit number 247, which the FBI had rented under a false identity, and made a show of unlocking it. Inside, he spread out the fake evidence and waited. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the facility. A black SUV pulled up, and Floyd Faulkner stepped out. He wasn't alone. Wally Rogers emerged from the driver's side, hand near his concealed weapon. Mr. Spencer, Floyd called out, walking toward the storage unit. Playing hide and seek with evidence? That's beneath you. Cedric stepped out to face him. Floyd, brave of you to come personally. Or stupid of you to think I wouldn't see through this. Floyd gestured at the surrounding darkness. You have FBI agents positioned around us, don't you? Cameras recording this conversation? A wire under your jacket. Cedric's blood ran cold. Floyd knew. Did you really think I'd fall for such an obvious trap? Floyd continued, smiling. I've been planning this for 5 years. I've anticipated every move you could make. From behind the containers, more figures emerged, not FBI agents, but Floyd's own security team. 6 armed men surrounded Cedric's position. The difference between us, Floyd said, is that I'm actually smart enough to spring my own traps. Agent McCarty, he raised his voice. Your teams have about 30 seconds before my people start firing on civilian targets in the surrounding buildings. There are families living in those apartments. Do you really want their deaths on your conscience? Cedric heard McCarty's voice through his earpiece. Stand down. Repeat, all teams stand down. We have civilians in the line of fire. Floyd had won. He'd predicted Cedric's trap and reversed it. Now then, Floyd said, approaching Cedric. Let's have a real conversation. Without the FBI listening in. Wally Rogers grabbed Cedric and ripped off his jacket, finding the wire and crushing it under his boot. They forced him into the storage unit, while Floyd's men maintained their perimeter. Here's what's going to happen, Floyd said calmly. You're going to confess to the trafficking charges. Full admission on camera, voluntary statement. In exchange, I'll make sure the evidence against you is weak enough that you only serve 5 to 7 years instead of life. And if I refuse, then I kill you right here, stage it to look like a suicide, and release even more damaging evidence posthumously. Your legacy becomes that of a pedophile and trafficker who couldn't face justice. Floyd's eyes were cold. Either way, I win. You just get to choose how much you suffer first. Cedric looked at Wally Rogers' gun pointed at his chest, at Floyd's triumphant expression, at the trap he'd walked into. Every instinct screamed at him to find a way out, to fight back, to wait. Floyd had been monitoring his communications with the Washington Post, his social media, his visible movements. But there was one communication channel Floyd didn't know about, the dead drop system Cedric had established years ago during his organized crime investigations. 3 days prior, before setting up this trap, Cedric had left a package at a specific location in Portland. Inside was documentation of everything. Floyd's operation, Gilda's testimony, financial records, evidence of the frame job. The package was addressed to 3 major news organizations with instructions to open it if Cedric didn't check in by a specific date and time. That deadline had passed an hour ago. You're right about one thing, Cedric said, meeting Floyd's eyes. I've been planning this for days. But you're wrong about seeing through it. Floyd's expression flickered with uncertainty. What are you? The storage facility was never the real plan. It was a distraction. Cedric smiled grimly. While you were busy monitoring my obvious moves, I sent everything I have on you to the Washington Post, New York Times, and CNN. Documentation, testimony, financial records, proof of your drug distribution network, proof you framed me. All of it. You're bluffing. Am I? What time is it, Floyd? Cedric checked his watch. It's almost midnight. My dead drop deadline was 11 p.m. Right now, editors at 3 news organizations are opening packages that contain enough evidence to end you. Floyd's confidence cracked. He pulled out his phone, checking news websites frantically. For a moment, nothing appeared. Then, breaking news, Floyd read aloud, his voice hollow. Federal investigation expands into Apex Medical Solutions. Allegations of drug distribution network, corporate corruption. The article was already live, and it was just the first one. That's impossible, Floyd whispered. I controlled everything. I monitored everything. You monitored the obvious things, Cedric said, but I'm an investigative journalist. I know how to move information without being detected. Every piece of evidence you try to bury, every witness you thought you'd silenced, every financial record you thought was hidden, it's all going public right now. Floyd's face transformed from shock to rage. He grabbed Cedric by the collar. I'll kill you. Right now, I'll... Go ahead, Cedric said calmly. Kill me on FBI surveillance cameras in front of federal agents. Add murder to your charges. Or you can run, maybe disappear before they find you. But your empire is already burning, Floyd. And everyone will know what you did. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. Floyd Faulkner stood frozen for several seconds, his phone displaying article after article exposing his operation. His carefully constructed facade had crumbled in minutes. Around them, his security team looked uncertain, hired muscle who hadn't signed up for a federal conspiracy case. Wally Rogers was the first to react. "Boss, we need to go. Now." But Floyd seemed paralyzed, staring at the phone. 5 years, he whispered. 5 years of planning. I thought of everything. How did you? You thought like a businessman, Cedric said. Controlling assets, managing risks, monitoring obvious channels. But I think like a journalist. We're trained to work around power structures, to find ways to get truth out even when powerful people try to stop us. Your father learned that lesson. Now, so have you. Through Cedric's earpiece. Rogers had destroyed the wire but missed the earpiece hidden in his ear canal. He heard McCarty's voice. Faulkner's armed units are backing off. Looks like they're abandoning ship, moving tactical teams into position. You still lose, Floyd said suddenly, his voice gaining strength. Even with everything exposed, I have lawyers, resources, connections. I'll fight this in court for years. And those trafficking charges against you? Even if I planted them, the accusation sticks. Your reputation is destroyed regardless of the truth. Maybe, Cedric acknowledged, but at least 17 families who lost loved ones to your father's contaminated medications will know justice was served. Susanna Sharp gets to go home to her mother. And hundreds of people won't become addicted to the opioids you were distributing. I can live with my reputation being damaged if it means stopping you. Floyd's expression twisted into something ugly. You self-righteous bastard. You act like you're some hero, but you're just a man who destroys lives for a living. You ended my father, you're ending me. Your father ended himself when he chose profit over human lives, Cedric interrupted. You ended yourself when you chose revenge over moving on. I'm just a person who documented it. Wally Rogers grabbed Floyd's arm. Boss, federal agents are moving in. We have maybe 2 minutes to get out of here. Go where? Floyd laughed bitterly. It's over, Wally. Don't you understand? Spencer won. But Rogers wasn't giving up. He raised his gun, pointing it at Cedric. Then at least we take him with us. The shot rang out before Rogers could fire. He dropped, howling, his weapons skittering across the concrete. Agent McCarty and 3 tactical team members rushed in, weapons drawn. FBI, everyone on the ground. Floyd's security team immediately surrendered, hands raised. They were professionals who knew when the job was over. Floyd himself stood motionless as agents surrounded him. Floyd Faulkner, McCarty said, you're under arrest for drug distribution, conspiracy to commit fraud, witness intimidation, kidnapping, and about 24 other federal charges. You have the right to remain silent. As the Miranda rights were read, Floyd looked at Cedric one last time. I hope you're satisfied. I'm not satisfied, Cedric replied quietly. I'm sad that it came to this. You could have done anything with your resources and intelligence. Instead, you chose to become your father. Floyd had no response to that. Agents led him away in handcuffs, his empire collapsing around him in real time. Over the next few hours, the FBI rounded up the remaining members of Floyd's organization. Wally Rogers, despite his wound, was arrested at the hospital. Additional evidence was secured from Apex Medical Solutions facilities. The scope of Floyd's drug distribution network became clear, spanning 7 states, involving dozens of conspirators and generating tens of millions in illegal revenue. At dawn, Cedric stood outside the storage facility with Agent McCarty, watching the sun rise over Portland. You took an insane risk with that dead-drop strategy, McCarty said. If Floyd had called your bluff, it wasn't a bluff. I really did send everything to those news organizations. Cedric smiled slightly. The only gamble was whether they'd publish fast enough. Turns out, journalists love exposing pharmaceutical corruption. The Bureau is going to want your full cooperation as we build the case. You'll have it, but on one condition, you clear my name publicly. Press conference, official statement, everything. Floyd tried to destroy my reputation. I want it restored. McCarty nodded. Already in the works. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone will know you were innocent, and Floyd Faulkner was the real criminal. Cedric's phone buzzed. A call from his former editor at the Washington Post. I should take this. Spencer. The editor's voice was excited. The story is everywhere. Every major outlet is running with it. And there's talk of a book deal, maybe even a documentary series. Later, Cedric interrupted. Right now, I need to check on someone. He found Madge and Susanna Kane at a downtown hotel where they'd been staying under FBI protection. Mother and daughter were having breakfast when he arrived, Susanna looking healthier than she had in the warehouse basement. We saw the news, Madge said, standing to hug him. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Cedric corrected. You helped me understand Floyd's operation. Without your information, I never would have found the evidence. Susanna spoke quietly. Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Spencer. Cedric, and you don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're safe. He looked at Madge. The FBI says you might be called to testify against Floyd. You okay with that? More than okay, Madge said firmly. I want to see him convicted. I want to tell everyone what he did. Chapter 9, Aftermath. 6 months later, Cedric Spencer sat in a federal courthouse watching Floyd Faulkner's trial. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case. Testimony from Gilda Conley, Jewel Morris, Madge Kane, and dozens of others. Physical evidence from Apex Medical Solutions. Financial records showing the money flow. Digital evidence documenting the entire conspiracy. Floyd's defense team had fought hard, but there was too much proof. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge sentenced Floyd to 35 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 25 years. Additional charges were pending in multiple states. As marshals led Floyd away, he looked at Cedric one final time. No words were exchanged, but Cedric saw something in Floyd's expression that might have been acceptance. Or perhaps just exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Cedric. He'd spent the past 6 months working with federal prosecutors while also writing a book about the case, The Doorbell Trap, how a pharmaceutical empire tried to destroy an investigative journalist. Mr. Spencer, how does it feel to see justice served? Do you plan to continue investigative journalism? What's next for you? Cedric raised his hand for quiet. I'm grateful that the truth came out and that Floyd Faulkner will be held accountable for his crimes. As for what's next, I'm returning to what I do best. Investigating stories that need to be told, exposing corruption that needs to be revealed, and giving voice to victims who deserve to be heard. Stanford Stanton stood beside him, having served as a key witness in the trial. Cedric's also accepting a position as contributing editor for the Washington Post, focusing on investigative pieces about corporate crime and corruption. The announcement generated excited murmurs. Cedric's reputation had been fully restored, enhanced even by his role in exposing Floyd's conspiracy. The false trafficking charges had been publicly dismissed with an apology from the Portland DA's office, after Wally Rogers testified that he'd helped plant the evidence on Floyd's orders. Later that evening, Cedric hosted a small dinner at his new apartment downtown. His old house remained unsellable, too associated with the case. But this new place felt like a fresh start. Madge and Susanna Kane were there, along with Stanford, Agent McCarty, and Cedric's former editor from the Washington Post. They shared stories, laughed about close calls, and toasted to justice. I have something to show you all, Susanna said, pulling out her phone. She displayed an acceptance letter. I'm going back to school next month. Oregon State, Marine Biology program. I deferred for a year after everything, but I'm ready now. Applause filled the room. Madge beamed with pride. And I have news too, Madge added. I've started consulting with the FBI, helping them identify other potential trafficking victims and criminal enterprises, using my experience to help others. That's incredible, Cedric said genuinely. You're turning something horrible into something purposeful. As the dinner wound down and guests departed, Stanford lingered. I got a call from a producer today. They want to make a film about the case. They're offering serious money for the rights to your story. What did you tell them? That you'd want approval on the script and casting. Stanford smiled, and that any profit should go toward establishing a foundation for trafficking victims and families affected by opioid addiction. Cedric nodded. That sounds right. Alone in his apartment later, Cedric stood at the window overlooking Portland's lights. He thought about the doorbell camera alert that had started everything, a crying woman on his porch, a split-second decision to help her, and the cascade of events that followed. He'd been tested in ways he hadn't anticipated. Framed, arrested, publicly humiliated, nearly killed. But he'd also been reminded of why he became a journalist in the first place. To find truth, to expose wrongdoing, to hold powerful people accountable. Floyd Faulkner had spent 5 years planning revenge, building an empire of corruption, trying to destroy the man who'd exposed his father. But in the end, the same skills that had brought down Richard Faulkner had brought down his son. Cedric's phone buzzed with an email from his new editor at the Washington Post. "We have a tip about a medical device manufacturer falsifying safety data. Interested in investigating?" He smiled and typed his response. "Send me everything you have. I'll start tomorrow." Because that's what investigative journalists did. They pursued truth, they exposed corruption, and they didn't stop, no matter who tried to silence them. Floyd Faulkner had learned that lesson the hard way. And somewhere in a federal prison, he'd have 25 years to think about it. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.